Hello and welcome to the Stamperia Coffee and Chocolate mini album tutorial series designed for Scrap and Create. If you are just joining the series, all of these products that I'm using here are linked in the description box below to the Scrap and Create website, where you can just click on those products to follow along. In this tutorial, we're going to begin decorating page 1. So starting with the front of my page, I did open up my flaps and place some magnets. So this is in the center and approximately a ½ inch from the edge. Then I placed my magnet on top of that and closed my flap to place my magnet correctly here. Then I've also placed a magnet here on this flap, and this one is about 1 3/4 of an inch from this edge, or if you prefer to place it over here, the center of it is about 5/8 of an inch from the edge. Then place your coordinating magnet and close that flap. Once you have those placed, go ahead and cut some burlap if you're using burlap, some ribbon if you're using ribbon. You can use twine, whatever you prefer. We're going to make little pull tabs on our flaps. So my twine, my burlap, I have this strip here. I believe it's 2 inches. It's about 2½ inches wide. So I just cut this in 1-inch strips. So if you are using ribbon, you can cut it to be about 2½ inches long. We're going to be doubling this up and using this here as a pull tab. So I'm going to use my Fabri-Tac to do this. And I'm actually going to start here on the inside next to the magnet, because I do not want my fibers to be over top the magnet if I can help it. So I'm just going to place my adhesive there. Then I'll take my burlap, trim those ends a little bit, and place this here right next to my magnet. Now I'm going to close my flap and place my adhesive on the front side. I'll curve this around and place those ends right into my Fabri-Tac. Then I'm going to open up the smaller flap and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to add my adhesive right beside the magnet. Trim those end fibers a little bit and place those ends right into my Fabri-Tac. I'll close this one and then apply my adhesive to the front. I'm curving this one over and placing those ends right in my Fabri-Tac. From the leftover strip of paper that I had from the front cover, I've taken a piece and I've cut this to 1 3/8 of an inch by 7 1/4 inches. Then I used my corner rounder on the 2 right-hand corners and I've inked my edges. I'm going to take this piece and place this one here. I'm going to butt the end up against this flap so that there is a uniform border on the top, the right side, and the bottom, but there's going to be no border between the flap and this, because when I put the paper on the front, there will be a border here. Next, I'm going to be cutting a piece from here. I've used my 12 by 12 paper to do this. I've cut this to 2 1/8 by 7 1/4, and I'm going to be placing this piece here. So I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to place this right next to my magnet. So there is a uniform border around the left side, the top, and the bottom. From my 8 by 8 paper, I first cut a strip to measure 1 inch by 7¼ inches. Then I used my corner rounder on my 2 left-hand corners. Then I cut this to 2 1/2-inch strips. Now I'm going to place one strip here and one strip here. And I may need to trim these edges up just a little bit. They might be seen when I put the stuff in the center, so I'll come back to this in just a minute. Once I had that cut off, there was a 3/4 inch strip across the bottom of the page. I cut that all the way across. And then I cut 2 pieces that measure just slightly less than 3 3/4. So I also trimmed a little tiny bit off, so it's not quite 3/4 inch. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to make sure that this all fit once I put my card in the center. So you can wait until you have your card and then trim as needed, or you can just trim them slightly smaller now. So I'm going to place one piece at the top and one piece at the bottom. And then from the 12 by 12 paper, this one, I've cut my card, inked my edges, and I'm going to place this here. So it actually doesn't look too bad seeing that in there, but I might end up just going ahead and trimming them off. Actually, I think it'll be worse if I trim them off now, because then you'll probably see the glue. So I'm just going to leave them, and I'll put my card a little bit closer to that, which will give me a nice border over here. So when I place my pieces on, I'm going to place this piece first, then I'm going to place this piece, but I'm going to leave these pieces in place to know where to put these pieces, so there's this little tiny border between my pieces. Once these sides are on, I'll place the top and the bottom, and then I'll place my card last. I've cut one more piece from that 8-inch paper, and it measures 1 inch by 7¼ inches. Then I took my envelope punch board and I punched in the center, inked my edges, and this piece is going to go here. So if you didn't use your envelope punch board, or if you don't have one, you don't have to make that notch. If you use a circle punch, make sure you do that right in the center. So I'm going to place this here, and then we'll move to the inside flaps. From the remaining piece, I've cut this to 4 3/4. I've inked my edges, and I'm going to place this here right up against the score line on the right, and it's going to cover the magnet, and it's going to go slightly over the coffee paper. So I'm going to place this one here. And then from my 12 by 12 paper that looks like this, I've cut from the bottom right corner a piece that's 4 3/4 by 7 1/4. I used my corner rounder on the right 2 corners, inked my edges, and I'm going to place this here so that there is a uniform border around all 4 sides. Once these pieces are covered, you can go ahead and close the flap. We're going to add all the embellishments later, so we'll come back and add more to that. Now we're going to start here on this side. I've got my 8 by 8 paper. I've cut a piece to 2 1/2 inches, and then I trimmed from the bottom to 7 1/4, and I used my corner rounder on the left 2 corners. This piece is going to go here. Then from the 12 by 12 papers, I cut another piece, and this piece is going to go here. It measures 5 3/4 by 7 1/4, and I'm going to place it so that there is a small gap between these 2 pieces of paper. From the remaining strip from the 8 by 8 papers, I cut 2 pieces. These measure 1 3/4 by 7/8 inch. I'm going to place one here, placing the bottom edge up against the top of this photo mat, and one here, placing the top edge up against the edge of the photo mat. Then from this 12 by 12 paper, I've cut the bottom left corner. So this is 6 1/4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to place this here right in the center of my photo mat. I've gone ahead and inked my edges, so I'm going to place these down and come back and cut the pieces for here. From this 12 by 12 paper, I cut from the top left corner 6 1/2 by 7 1/4. Then I cut this to 2 inches. So this piece is going to go here, and it's going to tuck just slightly underneath that belly band. And it's going to tuck up against the score line. Now this piece is 4 1/2 inches, so it's going to tuck underneath the other side of the belly band, leaving a small border between this piece and the piece already on the page. Now that this is covered, I'll go ahead and close my page. I'm going to flip over and start working on the back side. And like I said before, we'll come back later once the whole page is finished and add some embellishments. So to start with this page, I did add my magnet. So this magnet at the top is in the center about 1/2 inch down from the top edge of the page. And then I added another one and then closed it to place my coordinating magnet. Starting with this 8 by 8 paper, I've cut the side off first to 1 1/4 inches. Then I trimmed the bottom, so this is 7 1/4 inches. I used my envelope punch board here in the center and inked my edges. This is going to go here. Then from this piece, from the bottom right corner, I cut this to 4 3/4 by 6 1/4. And I've used my corner rounder on my bottom 2 corners and inked my edges. So this piece is going to go here, but I'm going to be placing some of my burlap pull here, so I'll come back in just a second to that. This piece here is from the 12 by 12 paper, and this piece is cut to 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. I used my corner rounder on the top 2 corners, inked my edges. This one is going to go here. So I can place this one on here without doing anything, but I do need to come up here first and place a piece of that burlap like we did before. I'm going to start on the back side again. I've got my piece of burlap that I cut. It's a 1 inch strip, and I trimmed the edges off to get it ready. So just like before, I'm going to place my adhesive around the magnet, and then I'm going to place my burlap right up against it. Then I'll go ahead and close this and add my adhesive to the front side. Flip this up and adhere those ends into my adhesive. So now, once that's on, I can go ahead and place this right over top to hide those ends. I'll place this piece here and this piece here. From the 8 by 8 paper, I've cut one piece to 6 1/4 by 7 1/4. This piece, I've inked my edges. It's going to go in the center here. Then from the 12 by 12 paper here, I've cut a piece to 1 1/4 by 7 1/4. Then I rounded my 2 left-hand corners. I've inked the edges. Then I cut this into 2 5/8 inch pieces. Then I just inked these edges here in the center. So these pieces measure 5/8 by 7 1/4. This one is going to go here. And this one is going to go here. From this 12 by 12 paper, I've cut a piece to 6 1/4 by 9 inches. Then I cut this to 4 3/4. This one's 4 1/4. I used the corner rounder on the bottom 2 corners here and inked my edges. It's going to go down on the bottom flap. This one is 4 3/4 by 6 1/4. I've used my corner rounder on the top 2, and it's going to go on my top flap. Once all of these are covered, we can go ahead and close those flaps and open up to the inside. Now for over here first, from the 8x8 papers, I'm using this entire piece. I trimmed off that little wood piece at the bottom, and then I cut this to 7 1/4 inches. I've inked my edges, and I'm going to be placing this right here, and it will come right to that white border. So that little tiny piece will be tucked underneath. Once I put this down, I'm going to place some adhesive on my top and bottom of this little flap, and I'm going to close it so that it forms a tuck spot. Now that my paper is on, I'm just going to add a little bit of adhesive here at the top and the bottom, kind of about 1/4 inch, just not a lot, because I want to be able to tuck a full-size photo mat into this tuck spot that's going to hold that larger flap closed on the page. So I'm just using my bone folder to burnish this, making sure it's nice and flat and it's not really puckered. Then I'll be able to place something in here. From this 12x12 paper, I cut this piece to 5 inches by 7 1/4 inches. Then from over here on this section, I've cut this piece to 2.5 by 7 1/4. And I'm going to be using this piece on this side. So I've rounded my corners on the right-hand side, inked my edges, and this is going to go here. Then this piece, I have inked those edges as well. It's going to go here right next to that score line. So if I put it right next to the score line, make sure you don't go over, I'll have that uniform border between these two pieces, and then I can place this one so that there is that small border between the pieces and then the border around the piece. From my cardstock, I have cut a piece to 4.5. From my Kraft cardstock, I've cut a piece that's 6.5 by 4.5. Now for the front, from my 12x12 chocolate paper, I've cut 2 pieces, and these measure just slightly under 1 1/4 inch, and they are 4 1/4 inches long. One is going to go on each side. From my 8x8 paper, I cut this bottom set of 4 cups, and I've cut it just like we did for the front cover. I've inked my edges, and these are going to go here in the center. Now from the leftover piece, I believe this might have been the 12x12 paper, I cut little tiny pieces. These are 1/4 inch by 3 3/4 inch. And I'm going to be placing one here on top and one here on bottom of my coffee cups. Now, once I have my little chocolate pieces on, I will come in and do this. And I believe that these pieces will be touching the coffee cup piece so that they are lined up perfectly. So there will not be a space between my little wood grain pieces and my coffee cup. So it will kind of look like it's supposed to be one solid piece. So here's my photo mat on the front side, and on the back side, I'm going to leave this blank for now. Since this is only the first page, I want to make sure that I have enough decorative paper before I start covering the back of things like my photo mats. Now, once I'm finished, I will come back through and add some extra finishing touches to some of these pages. So I will come back to this. If I don't put some of the decorative paper on, then I will probably just place white cardstock, a 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 white cardstock mat there. That way when the photo is placed on there, it'll just have a white border around it. But I will come back to this later. So I'm going to open these 2 flaps, and then I'm going to tuck this here. Now you can tuck it all the way in, but you will see it through your little cutout here. I'm just going to tuck mine here like this. You can also, if you don't want that to go through, you can take this. Actually, I'm going to use my other glue that has a little bit of a thinner tip on it, so I think it will be easier. You can take this and add just a little bit of adhesive to your little cutout section to close this up, and then that photo mat will not come out of that opening, so it will be contained in that pocket. So now when I place this in here, it will only go as far as here, but it holds this larger flap closed so that when I turn my page, that doesn't flap open. This is it for page 1. We have finished decorating everything for now. Remember, at the end of the video series, once all the pages are decorated, I am going to come back and do a finishing touches video where I will add chipboard and some of the cut apart pieces that we fussy cut from the papers. So everything is done till this point, but we will add those later once we have all those pages done. If you are just joining the tutorial series and you'd like to follow along, go ahead and go into the description box where you will find links for all of the Stamperia Coffee and Chocolate papers on the Scrap and Create website. So you can purchase all those products and you can follow along with the tutorial. In the next video, we will begin working on and decorating page 2. I'll see you in the next tutorial.